You have known you were going to die since you were a child, and you have lived almost every day since as though that were not true. In ancient Rome, when a general returned from a military victory, he was permitted a triumph, a procession through the city, crowds, recognition, the full apparatus of public celebration, and positioned beside him in the chariot, for the duration of the procession, was a slave whose only function was to repeat a single phrase into his ear. The phrase was this: "Remember that you will die, not once at the beginning, continuously, through the celebration, through the crowds, through the moment of highest public elevation." The reminder ran underneath everything like a second current. The strangeness of this practice is the point. The Romans did not consider it morbid. They considered it necessary specifically at the moment of greatest success, when the distance from one's own mortality was most likely to become absolute, when the illusion of permanence was most seductive. This is not a failure of intelligence or courage. It is something stranger than either of those. The mind builds distance from the fact of its own ending deliberately, though not consciously. Full, sustained contact with finitude would make ordinary functioning nearly impossible. The weight of it, held constantly, would crowd out the smaller concerns that daily life is actually made of. So the mind files the knowledge somewhere accessible, retrievable on demand, and almost completely inoperative as a force in daily life. You can state it clearly, you can nod at it when it comes up, and then you can return to worrying about whether someone misread the tone of your message, or whether you are behind on something that will not matter in a decade. The protection works, almost too well. What the Roman practice was actually doing was not producing fear. Fear is what happens when death feels like a distant event that might be approaching. What the practice produced was something different, a collapse of the distance, a momentary closing of the gap between knowing death abstractly, which everyone does, and feeling it as a structural feature of the present moment, which almost no one does without practice. The wakefulness that followed was not the wakefulness of dread. It was the wakefulness of someone who has stopped pretending that time is inexhaustible. The practice had a name: Memento Mori, remember death, not as a threat, as a technology. Under that filter, certain things dissolve almost immediately. Most social anxiety becomes difficult to sustain when the frame is wide enough. The concern about how you appeared in a conversation last Tuesday, whether someone formed the wrong impression, whether you said the slightly wrong thing, these do not survive contact with actual finitude. Neither does most status competition, the comparison of positions and possessions and recognitions that occupies enormous amounts of human energy and produces almost none of the satisfaction it promises. Neither do the postponements, the things waiting for better conditions, more time, a version of the situation that will be more suitable for beginning. Under the filter, the postponements reveal their actual structure, not prudence, avoidance, with a deadline attached. What remains after the subtraction is worth looking at carefully, not in categories, in specific images. The person you would call first if the news were bad, whose voice you can already hear before you dial. The work you did once with no one watching, that felt more real than most of the recognized work that came after it. The place you have been meaning to return to for 3 years, for no reason you can fully articulate, just a persistent pull that never quite gets scheduled. These are not philosophical abstractions. They are things you already know. The filter does not reveal new information. It removes the noise that was making the known things hard to act on. The modern version of the avoidance the Romans were interrupting looks nothing like avoidance. It looks like its opposite, The health optimization, the longevity research, the tracking of sleep and stress and biological markers, the relentless productivity that fills every available hour with forward motion. None of this is without value. But underneath much of it, running as a quieter current, is the same mechanism the Stoics identified: the attempt to establish control over something that cannot ultimately be controlled. The distance is maintained. The methods have simply become more sophisticated. Here is a number worth holding for a moment before continuing. The average human life contains approximately 4,000 weeks, not years, weeks. The number is small enough to count, which is precisely why it is useful. Most people encountering it for the first time are already past the midpoint. The weeks already spent cannot be retrieved or extended. The weeks remaining are finite in a way that the word finite does not fully convey until it becomes a number small enough to visualize. 4,000 is not an abstraction. It is a quantity, and a quantity can run out. The same awareness can be held in two completely different ways, and the way it is held determines everything about what it produces. Held as anxiety, the finitude of time becomes a pressure that makes the present moment feel insufficient. There is not enough time, which means whatever is happening now is already inadequate, already falling short of what should be happening, given how little time remains. This is Memento Mori, experienced as a wound. It produces urgency without direction, restlessness without presence, the feeling of being behind on a schedule that was never clearly specified. Held differently, the same finitude produces the opposite. Not urgency, but attention. The present moment becomes interesting rather than insufficient, not because it has changed, but because it is now being met by someone who is not treating it as a placeholder for a more important moment later. Presence is not a disposition. It is what happens when the future stops functioning as the primary location of the life being lived. These are not two types of people. They are two ways of holding the same fact, available to the same person, on the same day, depending entirely on whether the awareness arrives as threat or as structure. Once today, for approximately 30 seconds, hold the fact of your death as real, not as a future event at an unspecified distance, not as a concept you can retrieve and set aside, as a feature of today specifically, something true about this particular day, this particular hour, in the same way that the weather outside is true about it. Then notice what shifts in the hour that follows. Not what you think should shift, what actually does. That is the practice. That is what the slave was whispering.